That's the one that trains you to be able to focus your attention. And it's not just a self-promotional claim on Thomas Schumpeter's part.
Right.
It's very easy for anybody to see that that's exactly what it does. It doesn't do any esoteric, weird, there's no subliminal messaging or any other.
There,
no.
She's talking about
if
you.
You look
How would she know
at
that?
If you're worried about that stuff, first of all, check yourself for paranoia. But at the same time, you can easily check the video. You can pause it and look carefully at still shots and see. He gets accused of things by some very, very ignorant, superstitious. Well, I won't say ignorant because they're self-serving, because they understand meditation and other things like that. But it's not okay for anyone else to speak about these things. The Brain Apple video is a very practical focusing exercise.
Right.
That uses some light black and white patterns swirling around a very small center.
To hypnotize.
And in the very small center is a message. I can only paraphrase it. I don't have anything in front of me to say it out to you.
Oh, if it was so wonderful, how come you don't remember the message?
We are living in a world of, we are not living in a world of reality. We are living in a world of perceptions.
I agree with that.
We are living in a world of perceptions, not a world of reality. I might have it reversed. But it's a simple assertion.
It's not a matter of what the note in there said. It was the hypnotizing
we are living in.
And hallucinogenic effects that it has.
I would step outside of
That's the problem.
Video.
And he even had the warning on it.
If you live your life a certain way, you can live in reality.
So she goes on for an hour and 26 minutes.
Oh, boy, that's longer than usual.
The world of reality.
Trying to act like she knows what she's talking about.
Because people who live in cities.
Well, now she's saying it different.
Are sometimes so cut off that they don't even have contact with plant life. I mean, unless they have a house
plant life.
They're surrounded by concrete and metal and glass. And the food they eat doesn't look like what it was when it was walking around in a pasture. You know, they don't have any connection to how it got to their plate other than their credit card. So they are completely in a world of perception of human artifacts. But those who take time out to reconnect with nature in some form are reconnecting with the world of reality. And this is not Thomas's thing that I'm talking. This is my thing, I guess, that I'm talking about.
Right.
I mentioned in the other video that I had some, or maybe it was I typed it in a tweet somewhere. I mentioned that in my early training, schooling, education, upbringing,
Hello?
You are on the air.
Why?
Because I'm stream painting.
Why?
Because I always stream paint.
Why?
Usually Siren comes in and keeps me company, and I can ask her for tips and tricks and stuff.
I'm about to go get a job at Amazon.
What about your daycare job?
I want more money.
Oh my.
I'm getting the daycare shut down probably.
You are? Uh-oh.
Yeah. I already called CPS and state and talked to some parents and
Uh-oh.
told all my workers that have been there for 12 years that I'm making like $5 more an hour than them.
Oh. Why are you doing that?
Because they fired her.
They fired her?
Yeah.
Why?
I didn't have a car.
She couldn't go to work because her car wouldn't start.
Oh, well, I'm surprised if they're that hard up for workers, they'd be more understanding about that.
There's people that miss way more money days than me. I think they wanted to fire me because they paid me too much money because they were so short-staffed at first. So they didn't want to keep paying me that, I think. So I literally make more than everybody there.
Yeah, I didn't know you got fired. When was that?
Monday.
I mean, what are you supposed to do when you don't have a car? You don't have a car. I mean, they can offer to come pick your ass
I
up.
offered to pick me up, too. Yeah. So now I'm going to be an Amazon driver and make more money.
Well, they're probably more strict on things like coming in late or missing days and stuff.
Let's hope I don't crash a truck.
I think they didn't want to pay what they were paying her anymore because they can now try and get employees and they'll pay somebody less.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, this is not what I got. Whatever. Gross. Dad, do you think I'll crash an Amazon truck?
You what?
You think I'll crash an Amazon truck?
No, why would you crash a truck?
They're big.
It's no different than driving your car. It's just a little bigger. Just got to be careful.
Also, Mom, with Amazon, I have fun to drive, number one. Number two, I get full benefits. So if I finally have insurance, I'll be making way more money. And I can make extra money if I want. Mom?
Say you can get extra money.
I have full benefits.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
I finally have insurance.
I'm trying to draw an eyeball.
An eyeball, like a realistic one?
Well, the avatar. It shouldn't be this wide, but I'm making it my own.
Mom.
Yes.
Remember I told you one of the teachers lost a 2-year-old?
Yes.
The autistic one?
Yes.
Well, they never told his parents. So I called his mom yesterday. I told her.
Oh no.
I'm not happy. And after I did everything, I messaged all my coworkers, my boss kept trying to call me, and I kept ignoring her. You think they're mad now?
What?
What? No one's trying
What?
to.
Oh, I thought you said Dad. I was going to say I was pooping. I couldn't hear you.
Well, guess I'm gonna go to this interview, huh? Get me a job where I get to freeze all winter outside. Dad, I'll finally be working outside with you.
So you'll be like a shipping truck, like a UPS?
Yeah, but Amazon. Now Dad can't bitch about working outside because I'm gonna be doing it too.
Well, they're probably strict about days off too.
Probably. We'll see.
That's what I said, yeah. Oh, definitely. If they offer benefits and shit, they play by the book.
I might only do like 4 days a week there, and then either waitress on the side or they have like if I want to, they have an app. It's called Amazon Flex. It's like DoorDash. You can just go deliver packages whenever you want in your own car.
Didn't you say something about Hooters?
Yeah, but anyway, I can just start up my car and go pick up an Amazon package and deliver it on the weekend if I feel like without like having to set schedule. So I might do that. So I might do like 4 days a week. And then because I'll be making like almost 20 an hour. So if I work like 4 days a week and then just have like a side job.
Well, that's fine as long as your deliveries aren't like massive distances and shit, because you got to pay for your own gas and your own upkeep on your car and all that shit.
Oh no, when you do the drive ones with your own car, I'm gonna work for Amazon like 4 days a week with their truck. And then if I want to, over the weekends, I can deliver if I get bored in my own car. But they pay you extra. That's like $30 an hour. They cover gas. And if it's like a farther job, they pay you more.
When we were a motorized bicycle.
But alright. Wish me luck.
Okay. Bye.
I figured she told you she got fired.
No.
She told me, so.
When did she get?
Like Monday.
Oh, wow. No. No wonder she hasn't been calling me on her lunch.
Because her car broke down Saturday at the tailgating, and so Monday she didn't have her car fixed, so she called in. She said that her boss said it was okay, not a problem, and then all of a sudden one of her coworkers called and said, oh yeah, so-and-so said that you were being fired. And so then Barbie called and asked them why the hell they were telling the other employees that she was fired when they told her it was okay. And her boss got shitty about it.
Wow.
Because Barbie confronted her. And Barbie said they were trying to fire her like a week or so ago. She goes, I think they just had it in for me.
Because they paid her more.
Well, that, and I told her, I said, look, you know what? They expect you to be there every day, and if you're not there, you know, they're gonna fucking eventually they're gonna get rid of your ass. She didn't believe me. So she's finding out the hard way. That dad's right.
Whatever you want to call it, as a child, very young, like maybe first grade. The nuns would talk to us about this. Now, this is not done in Anglo public schools. This is why we see a breakdown in Anglo. When I say Anglo, it's because I'm American, and our culture is not English culture like British English culture, which is probably a little bit better grounded because they're still closer to their European roots. Although I don't know. I mean, there's some crazy stuff coming out of England. And they did, in fact, England, I believe, was the first country to create industrialized towns and cities that separated people completely from the land. More completely than the old living in a town, but still having somebody on the edge of town with a few sheep or, you know, chickens or whatever. Anyway, what the nuns taught us was very important to the rest of what I'm going to talk about. In French, you have two words. You have la terre, which generally means the earth, the planet Earth, and le monde, which means the world. Now, we have the same thing in English. I just said in English. You have the earth and you have the world. And generally, when people are speaking about the world, they're not speaking about the planet, okay? They're speaking about the human shell, like all of the human activity, and you know, the world as all the countries, which are the language, and you know, all of
yeah, she tries to sound important here.
The planet, and then on the layer, the skin of the planet, we have the human buildings and the human electric network of. I mean, if you think about all these wires that go from pole to pole to pole, or shoot through pipes underground, just barely, maybe, you know, a foot or two underground, from building to building, you basically got a very fine net that covers the entire planet. And so this net and the buildings and the people walking on the skin, that's the world. Okay. Then when you're talking about the earth, you're talking about the planet, the water, the dirt, the soil, the life forms on it, grasslands, jungles, etc. We did not create the earth or the life on it. We certainly changed a lot of it. We manipulated. We've created individual crops by cultivating plants that would never grow on their own in the wild. But basically, that's just manipulation of something that did grow on its own in the wild at one point. So if you get out, and this is very important for children, parents really need to, even if you're going to just stay in your world, stuck to your laptop and everything, at least instead of sitting in your kitchen with your laptop on the table and the kids watching video games on the couch, head out to the beach, find a way to download your stuff if you can't go be on grid at the beach or wherever. Bring your laptop, do your work there, and let the kids have their feet in the sand and feel the waves, or go to the park and let them, play.
What is she going on about?
Like that.
Said she's trying to act like she knows what she's talking about.
Just being there is grounding them for the rest of their lives. Just being there.
She has no clue what she's talking about.
And it's a lot harder for
she's trying to explain how wonderful deceptive Thomas's video is.
Leadership, brainwashing, totalitarian, whatever you want, tyranny. It's very difficult for tyranny to really take control of people who have been in touch with reality.
Oh, by the way, so yeah, the bitch, did you see her comment on your shit?
Her comment on my shit?
Right here.
Hang on.
And there are the challenged, your Halloween thing.
Uh-huh.
Denise commented on it. She pinned you, or whatever. Spoken like a true pedo groomer.
I didn't get a notification for that. 2 hours ago? I haven't looked.
No, not 2 hours ago. Oh. This is a screen capture.
Well, no, I didn't.
It was from last night, but it might have been after you went to bed. But yeah.
What the hell?
Uh-huh. Like a real pedo groomer.
She replied on my tweet. Oh, you want to go? You want to tweet now?
Apparently she does.
Old lady?
Outside of human reality.
I'm surprised she didn't block me when I commented on one of hers, correcting her.
The thing about that
politely
is the nuns never told us they were teaching us anything deep. It was just, here we're going to have French vocabulary lesson. When you say la terre, you're meaning the dirt and the planet, which God made. See, they're not allowed to say that in public school. But parochial school, yeah, this is a physical reality that came out of a spiritual action. And we were not Bible thumpers, okay? The Catholic religion, whatever it is today, what we received pre-Vatican II, because we had a good old parish priest who resisted the Novus Ordo. Oh, I'm gonna have to move a little bit here in order to get to a better spot. I'm gonna turn the camera off, but I'll still be here.
A better spot.
Okay, hold on a second while I resettle. Well, we had an old parish priest.
Look, she turned the camera off so you couldn't see her getting out of her chair and unplugging her undies and all that. Yeah.
And getting her moo-moo twisted in a bunch.
Back to the Middle Ages. I mean, the things we learned, I realize now we were learning exactly what...
She's having a hard time getting resituated.
Let's see.
There she is.
Oops. There we go. We were learning exactly what would have been taught in the parochial system in
She's
the
got
1500s.
a ticker tape. Please support my channel by sharing.
By writing by hand what was being said. We were learning to copy things out by hand. The monks, the scribes in the monasteries, that's what they did. Everything we learned was actually out of the monastic education. I digress a little bit.
I digress.
About children learning at a young age that there are two realities. There's the natural reality, which is described as God created. But okay, this is what I was trying to get at before I interrupted myself. Our concept of God in the Catholic Church is not the old man with the beard.
Right.
Okay, he might be depicted that way in Catholic literature today because the artwork is being drawn by modern people. But really, we learned, and it was in the Baltimore Catechism, which was the approved catechism for American English in the Catholic Church, we would memorize answers to questions, basic questions. The basic thing is, who is God? Answer, God is the supreme being. And that, learning to memorize that answer, gave the nuns the opportunity to teach us that this was not a human being. What is a being? And what is a creature? A creature is something that is created. A being is something that is just there. So God is something that was just there. Supreme meaning before or over everything else. That's the only definition we were given. And we were taught that all the other definitions, the names of God, the pictures that show God in different ways, are all our own human effort to understand and communicate our understanding of what the Supreme Being is, or who it is. So that's pretty deep stuff. But the nuns were able to teach it to very young children because we were learning vocabulary and we were memorizing catechism. And the way the human mind works is you can learn something at one level and it stays in your brain, and then later on you return to it and get the whole thing back at a much deeper level. I'm going to have to do the thing with the camera again because I need better light. So hold on a second, please. There. I hope that's better than making you get seasick while I walk around.
I hope that's better than making you get seasick while I walk around. She needs better light.
Good job. Keep that. Give me that.
You don't need better light. We don't really need to see you better, Denise.
I hope the cat didn't sound funny when she just laid down on the phone. So basically, that's something that, there was a big thing. It started when I was in high school, and when I was in college, it was like, oh, you can't make children memorize things. That's so mean, making them do that, so on. And it was part of a brainwashing operation, the same brainwashing that I realized when I went to college that we were being brainwashed. It started in high school. We had an Anglo public school educated guidance counselor who had all her college lessons in psychology, but she never got her degree, and she let it be known it was because she refused to take the language requirement. Because in those days, you were required to take one foreign language. And a lot of people were jealous of us kids who came out of the Catholic schools because all the Catholic schools taught 2 foreign languages from the beginning. Their own ethnic language, Polish, French in our schools, and Latin. Because at those times, the church had a universal language so that people all over the world could speak to each other if they were Catholic, and they could speak in Latin. And that was actually very useful because the priests over the entire world were able to communicate, and you didn't have the kind of mess that you've got now in the Vatican, because now there's no standards. But that's another subject. But the brain is made of folded waves. And
Folded waves.
I had that song at the beginning about waves. if you watch waves, they fold. It's basically water is rising up and folding over, rising up and folding over. And if you look at the brain, over the period of time that the brain grows, it starts out fairly smooth and it rises, the folds rise up and fold over and rise up and fold over until the brain is adult maturity. And it's pretty uniform. I think that brain surgeons have a pretty detailed map of exactly where each fold should be and what function it serves in the brain. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's true. But the thing is, okay, we're looking at eternity. If you're looking at the waves on the ocean, each wave is maybe a minute from when you see it form a little bit out from the shore as it comes in. It might be 30 seconds, it might be a minute. And goes back into the water, it disappears and then the wave comes back again. In the brain, the molecules are forming in the womb, and over a period of years, they fold over and move like the water. And then in old age, they deteriorate. I mean, very old age. I'm not there yet. Don't worry about it. But at a very, very old age, they may begin to deteriorate, and finally the person returns to the ocean of being. Waves are very, very important in communication. We know about it because waves, Wi-Fi is basically waves. Wireless communication relies on waves. Sound is nothing but waves. Somebody was speaking. I was watching some videos of Max Spiers, some interviews. He's dead now. And his death is one of those controversial conspiracy deaths because he was, I dismissed him, and I still dismiss him in a certain way. I dismiss these people who were into the super soldier fantasies because there's a lot of fantasy with that. And I'm not researching anything, okay? Listening to videos and watching videos that somebody else has already put together on a topic is not research. I mean, it may be a little bit educational, but please, people out there who are going to talk to me about being a researcher, I'm not a researcher. But I am enjoying watching videos. Max Spiers came to my attention recently. And when I went and was, oh yes, I remember this guy being shoved at me, probably when he was still alive, in terms of YouTube fan trolls running around trying to make everybody watch whatever they're obsessed with at the moment, and getting very angry at you if you say you're not interested. And what that did to me was, as soon as I see that coming, I just glance in that direction and say, no, I'm not even going to watch that guy's videos. Because of the waves around him, the waves of fan trolls, because he was being promoted by static. I spoke in the other video about how, we can't really distinguish. There's all kinds of waves. If you look at the water, you're seeing waves that make no sense. There's no pattern to them. They're just everywhere, which way. And it's a uniform kind of look to it. But then all of a sudden, the waves will start moving in a certain direction, and then there's a current, or they'll swirl, and you realize you have a vortex, and it's going to go deeper. But when the waves are just chaotic and not going anywhere, you're not getting anything out of that. The same thing is true in sound. If it's just chaotic, we use it to relax. We put on white noise. A fan will create just a chaotic, static noise, and it's hard to pull other sounds out of the air. somebody comes into the room speaking when a fan is on, and I have a hard time hearing them. I have to say, wait a minute, and get up and turn the fan off and say, what'd you say? Because I can't really filter it. Our brain is a filter. It filters so that we can perceive. And in some educational systems, such as the old French parochial system, children were taught to filter. They weren't brainwashed like they are today. They weren't put in fear. You know, the whole thing about hellfire and brimstone, that's a Protestant thing. Yeah, the nuns would start talking about hell to the older kids. They didn't generally do that to the younger kids, at least not in the French Catholics. I know the Irish Catholics, their nuns were Dominicans, and they had a reputation for being really mean. And I think there's a very different character among the Irish Catholics because of that. But the French nuns were more like hippies, really, in many ways. I mean, they were very conservative, mystical, much more mystical. And the people who are, well, I don't want to really go there, but there are some people who are terrified of mystics, because I'm not talking about New Age cuckoo-ness. I'm talking about the real grounding. And a lot of the people that are into the New Age, they talk about going to places like Sedona, Arizona, places that are reputed to have a great vortex of energy. And it seems silly, and it's really a scam among those who do all the talking. But those who actually go to those places and actually remove themselves from their New Age buddies and go alone, they have a very solid opportunity to really ground themselves and sense why the reputation of a place got started in the first place. So getting back to Max Spiers, all right. I'm not a fan of Max Spiers or any of the whole conspiracy stuff, because a lot of it has been manipulated and promoted and is definitely a big part of the Peter Ring problem that we have in the, I think it's more than the English-speaking world, frankly, because there's a whole tradition among Islamics of young boys playing a certain role in their culture. So it's certainly not an Anglo problem. But we are beginning to face it as a culture. I digressed a little bit. Let me trace my thoughts. So if you can do this filtering, if you can learn, then you're better grounded, okay? That's where the word grounding comes from. And Max Spiers is somebody that I think was a natural. The little bit that I've seen so far, listening to him, there's a real authenticity in his speech. Unfortunately, he was a drug addict. And you cannot, there's a certain point beyond which you can't go. That's why, you know, the brainwashing CIA-based conspiracy tyrants, they want everybody to get drugged up. Go down and take some ayahuasca, or stay home and take all kinds of pills or whatever. Smoke a lot of pot, whatever it is. And they push intoxication. You know, intoxication means you're poisoning yourself. It doesn't mean you're smoking a little bit of pot to relax, drinking a little bit of wine to relax. No, you're going over the step. You're taking something that's really going, you know, probably stronger than alcohol and marijuana, and you're changing, your mind altering with drugs, with a chemical. It's a material approach to a spiritual quest. And it's dangerous. It's also futile. And the problem with it is, it's just like somebody who thinks that if they meditate in front of a large TV screen of the vortex rocks of Sedona, Arizona, that it's the same as going out there. It's not. But when listening to Max Spiers, you definitely get the sense that he understood what he was seeing and experiencing. And he spoke about ritual. And this is something that has been systematically, just a second, I want to lean back here a little bit. This is something that's been systematically destroyed because we're in a process right now of earthly civilization. The human civilization that is grounded on the planet is being absolutely destroyed. I mean, I'm sitting here speaking as a member of the last generation of earthbound humanity. Within 20 years, I believe 20, maybe 50 if we're lucky, it will last another 50 years. And if we're lucky, we will have if we're lucky, we will still be here, but we won't be earthbound because we will have already started to colonize Mars and maybe other planets as well. I have a funny feeling that as soon as we set foot on Mars, before we really establish ourselves there, we'll also be going further because we'll have made that first jump and the rest is going to go very quickly, just like it did in our evolution on Earth. We had maybe hundreds of thousands of years as forager hunter-gatherers. Then we made a little bit of a jump into agriculture. So then we had, instead of hundreds of thousands, we had tens of thousands of years with agriculture and building and making ships and sailing. And then when we jumped from agriculture to industrial, 2 centuries, 3 centuries, less than 1,000 years, and we're already headed for outer space. This is significant. I mean, this is the last generation of purely earthbound humanity. If we don't make that jump into space, we're most likely going to self-extinguish. Hopefully, we won't actually destroy the rest of the life on the planet as we do it. It'll be like what happened in the ages of the dinosaurs. Most of them all died off, and there were a few marsupials and a crocodile here and there that managed to survive and repopulate and evolve. But what Max Spiers was talking about was ritual repetition, and how rituals are designed, like if you get into the occult and magic and stuff like that, rituals are designed to do it a certain way, and they do it at certain times. And each time, this is why the oldest rituals are considered the most powerful, is because they've been done over and over, and frequently there are some that you only do in a certain place. Okay? Well, as a human tribe, going back to the tribe I grew up in, I'm going to start referring to my background as tribal. I'm not referring to Native American. But European American, French American, extended family, natural birth, communication tribes. That's what we were. We were a tribe. That society doesn't exist anymore. We've been atomized. And there are all kinds of artificial approximations, but the attacks on us as a people came from the Abrahamics, and the hostility between Protestant and Catholic is generally because the Protestants returned to the Hebrew word of the spirit Jehovah, who is not the supreme being. Jehovah of the Old Testament is not God. Can't be. Because over and over again, Jehovah of the Old Testament identifies himself as a jealous God. The supreme being cannot be jealous. Only an inferior being can be jealous. On top of it, he repeatedly demanded proof from the Israelites of their loyalty and faith. If he were God, he wouldn't have needed them to prove anything because he would have understood and known what they were. So you see, logic, waves of logic. But the Catholic faith is based on a wave of truth that came out from Jesus of Nazareth and was overlaid onto a variety of pagan practices in different places. Some parts around the Mediterranean, it mixed more with the Greek, the Roman, Latinate, and when you get up into France, the paganism of France is mixed a little bit with the Gaelic, the Gauls, and the Celts. And you get up into Brittany, and you get up into the Norse Viking, So you've got, when there's no communication, the waves are chaotic, the barbaric times. But when the waves form a pattern, they go somewhere. And the patterns began to form when the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth could blend with the pagan wisdom, not obliterate it.
Oh, come on, niece, Jesus Christ.
That's why the Protestants hate us. And it's also, right now, the war it's coming out to be pretty clear that this war that's going on in the United States, the war that's been carried on quietly through random acts of violence. I mean, when a certain group of people on the East Coast, a certain group of white people, are heavily funding black on black violence, they're out to destroy that population. And they're also heavily funding the hunting of all kinds of other white people, going after the Amish, going after everybody who's well-grounded. And there was recently, it came out that the Hassanite cult, Steve Hassan's cult, is heavily supported by his synagogue in Boston. They are funding the heck out of it, and they have openly declared, where Hassan himself has openly declared that they have to go after individuals who are mystic Christians. This is not a surprise to me. It was a surprise to the person who told me about that Hassan had blurted that out in frustration at a conference. But it explains the training of the criminal networks based up in Indiana and Michigan. It explains why they were able to get such an alliance between the Abrahamic extremists, which includes the Mossads, that come after Americans, that are basically toppling the American government system. The jihadis, who want to establish their caliphate. The atheists that want the satanic anarchy. What all of those things have in common? It's a complete break from the earth. And it's interesting because I look forward to that, Elon Musk's space program, as crazy as Elon Musk may be in certain ways. The space program, I hope, is bigger than he is. I hope it succeeds. But the Abrahamic religion, the Jewish Hebrew tradition of the Bible was not original with the Jews. It came out of Egypt. Egypt created an artificial culture. The Egyptian culture under the pharaohs, they lived in urban settings. I mean, if you time traveled back to there and showed up there, beyond having your polyester suit and your Nike shoes causing quite a sensation, you'd probably get rid of that stuff right quick and put on some cotton, hand-woven cotton, and maybe get a job harvesting papyrus reeds down near the river or something, making bricks for the pyramids, whatever. And suddenly you wouldn't really feel like you really were anywhere different from today, because you'd be wearing a cotton toga or something similar to a hippie, so it would be like wearing a cotton t-shirt. You wouldn't have power tools, but you'd work just as hard every day, and you'd have bread and beer. And apparently they partied with lotus blossoms and wine. And after a few weeks of missing your cell phones and your trip to the mall and McDonald's, you wouldn't feel like anything was that unusual. You'd blend right in. But it would be an artificial world. Just like today, we live in an artificial world. The pagans are all the peoples around and outside those cities then and today. The people who stay grounded in the earth. And the less the cities depend on them for their food, the more the cities hate them. And now that farmers are really not necessary, what they do now for food, we do, is we have these giant industrial-sized machines and go out on vast acres of flatlands and harvest food. And the family farm is a personal lifestyle choice if you can do it. It's not part of society anymore. And so the grounding that comes with living on a family farm or being close enough to one to have at least some of your food come from it, it scares the people in the artificial world. That's why they want to destroy the human race. They've forgotten that they are human. They have forgotten that they are human. They were never taught. They didn't have a catechism lesson where a teacher carefully explained the difference between a human being and the supreme being. They think God is their higher self. Well, your higher self might be higher than your lower self, but it's not higher than everybody else. It's not that high. Unless you're high, and that's something you shouldn't probably be doing so much. I'm not driving anyway. I joke a little bit. The point is, these resonating waves and Max Spears being a natural. But what happens to a natural, okay? Most people are naturally shamanic, naturally able to perceive. And the earlier and earlier ages, that gets erased. Children now almost don't have any chance because they're not playing out in the ground with sticks and stones and mud. I mean, my daughter, when she was little, she and her friends, we had a funny experience one day. They used to go out in the yard and make little tiny villages. She called them gnome villages. And basically the houses would be about this big, and it would be broken twigs stuck in the dirt, and then a little bit of maybe a flat rock for a roof or whatever. And they've been pretty good at it. You know, they carved out little paths with pebbles and stuff. And one time a friend of mine was mowing the lawn for me, and suddenly looked down and saw this whole village in the grass and freaked out because she said it was like all of a sudden she felt like she was a pilot for some reason. I don't know what it was, because she was not a veteran, but it looked to her like a picture she had seen of a pilot going over Vietnam and looking down at the rice paddies before bombing them. And she looked down and she saw this little village, and she didn't know what it was. She didn't know about this little game that Soji and her friends would play. Soji is Faith. She called herself Faith as an adult. 10 years before she died, she started calling herself Faith. But as a child, we knew her as Soji, short for Sojourner. So Soji and her friends used to do that. They were well grounded because they played with natural. They had to go out and use their own imaginations to create something. Yes, she had access to computers and everything else. Whatever, I mean, based on that age, it wasn't like it is today, but she had electronic toys, so don't worry. She wasn't isolated from reality. I mean, from human society reality. But children today could have no experience of anything. They don't even color with crayons on paper anymore. They have a paint screen where they just touch their finger and make the colors just suddenly appear. And they don't even know that they're getting a very limited palette of color based on the pixels of that computer. They don't even learn to control color. The sounds are limited too. But anyway, where was I going? Max Spears. The children who play the way my daughter played, their natural spiritual perceptions come into play while they're playing those games, and they're having their spiritual thoughts and feelings and imagination triggered by what they're doing. There's no adult there directing them. Okay, so they're learning on their own, and then they'll question. And I was fortunate myself as a child to have mentors, and most of us did in my generation. And this is true in every generation, I guess. Some people are naturally more perceptive of these layers of reality than others. Some people are just stuck on one layer, one level only, and they won't go any deeper. It's not in them to go any deeper. But those who have a natural perception to go deeper, generally they'll get a teacher in our old custom taught through our old custom taught through our family rituals. Halloween, for example, was not the evil thing that it is today, and it is evil today. It is not healthy. All of the holidays, you did not have stuff out for a holiday more than 2 weeks before that holiday was to be celebrated. And the stuff was put away by a certain point after it was celebrated. So Christmas stuff was only seen at Christmas time. Halloween was only seen at Halloween time. All of the holidays were done that way. All of the rituals that went with the holidays were done the same every year. Bringing us to what Max Spears was saying was that when a ritual is done over and over, the spiritual side, the beings on the other side of these dimensions, they are, it's like running a program or making a path, walking on the soil. A path is worn, and the first few people who come along have a hard time following it because they've got to look very carefully. But after a while, anybody can see the path. Maybe they even pave it and put lights up. The same thing is true in the brain. Memorization is done by repeating things until finally the wiring of the brain is hardwired that, yeah, when you say this is going to happen. This is what you mean. You sing a song when you have this lyric. Somebody can tell you they don't remember the words to the song. But if you hum the first bar and say the first, oh yeah, then the other words come in because the path is cleared. Because the song's been repeated over and over so many times. That's why we had seasonal songs that we only sang at Christmas time. We did not sing them at the rest of the year. We did not sing them for other purposes. Christmas was the connection of the child to a safe world. That was the first thing the Abrahamics destroyed. There was a concerted effort to destroy Christmas because the Jewish American community knew that our entire culture was based on the Holy Family. And erasing our ability to sing our own Christmas carols as a community erased our ability to maintain ourselves as a community. And they could say, well, they had the right to do it to us because, these Episcopalians and especially the Presbyterians did it to the Native Americans. Some Catholic groups did it, but you know what? Most of the Catholics, you got to go by ethnic side. Not all the Catholic nun orders forced Native Americans or Native Canadians, First Nation people, to assimilate. There was a blending, particularly among the Quebecois, because the original French that came to what is now Maine and New Hampshire and Ohio, actually the Ohio River Valley was heavily French. They intermarried with and blended with the tribes. Same true in the South, the conquistadors. There was a lot of intermarriage because it was the English followed by the Irish who saw Native Americans as subhuman because they were color-struck. And of course, the Jewish American community, the American Jewish community, saw us all as Shiksas and Goyim. They hated all of us. They've always done that. They come to take what they see. And one of the things they did, we had wars with other cultures. There was war between whites and Native Americans. And the Native Americans stood their ground pretty good and might even have won in a few cases if it was just slightly tipped the other way. The Seminole Indians of Florida were never defeated. And there are some tribes up in the Northwest that held their ground until very recently. I think a lot of the people up north in Dakota, the Black Rock, when the people started going up there, the white kids from white suburbia started going into the Dakotas to protest the Keystone pipeline. A lot of them brought their suburban Judaic culture and destroyed the native communities. They were not welcome there. They may have had a common complaint about the Keystone pipeline, possibly, because I don't know that it was going to cause that much damage as they claim. I'm not an oil wonk. I don't really know the details. I just know that they caused more damage than anyone wants to admit. But getting back to the ritual thing, what Max Spears was saying is that the repetition of these rituals creates a stronger and stronger and stronger connection. And the repetition of rituals surrounding Christmas created a stronger and stronger and stronger connection to Holy Family, Holy Child, welcoming life, sharing of gifts. The commercialization, that was a big scam, okay, because a lot of us did not commercialize Christmas. Merchants did, yeah, partly because it was a harvest-based culture back then. Christmas was the result of the fall harvest. The season of Christmas really ran from Thanksgiving, where the first harvest of the food was in. And a lot of the cooking that was done at Thanksgiving time in the old system was basically all your local farmers. You went and we used to get a bushel of apples. I lived in Webster, Massachusetts, and there was an orchard in Oxford just over the line on the French River there. My dad used to go every fall and get a big bushel of apples, and my mother would can them. She made applesauce and apple butter. She made all kinds of apple stuff. She didn't do a lot of cooking, but she did like to cook with apples. She made all the apple stuff that would last us past Christmas. Same thing with other stuff like potatoes. We had a wheelbarrow full of dirt in the cellar, because that's how you used to store potatoes, was keep them in dirt in a container, large container, like a wheelbarrow. So Thanksgiving was the ritual of bringing in the fall food, processing it, canning it up, having the feast. Christmas was when you had taken some of that food and made the fancy, the fruit cakes. You had to start the fruit cake way before Thanksgiving because it was made with flour and everything else and fruit, and then rum poured on it, and then you had to keep taking it out and pour more rum until you finally have a fruit cake. And a lot of people laugh about the fruit cake, but it was made that way because, yeah, it won't last for years and years and years. It won't go bad. It's an old form of preserved food. It's also very good, and I like fruit. I will actually eat fruit cake. A lot of people don't, but I do. But the rituals were hardwiring generosity. The other thing about Christmas, the Christmas truce tradition, which used to be very deep in our culture, again, until the Jewish American community succeeded in destroying it. They made a concerted attack. They started showing up at town meetings, insisting that we pass a local ordinance first against Christmas carols that had words about religion. And then they even went after instrumental classical music played at Christmas time. Instrumental classical music. If the city could no longer have a band in the center square to play music at Christmas, which was done. They said it was a horrible commercial, as if the American Jewish community is not a horrible commercialization of everything it touches. When people made things in the old custom was between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Now, Thanksgiving, you did all the hard work. The harvest was in. The food was canned. You started pulling things out to make fancy pastries and things to put aside for Christmas. Candies mostly. And you make the pastries closer to Christmas. But the candies, that's like the fruitcakes. You can make them anytime and have them all year if you don't munch down on them. That's why candy is a big thing for Christmas. And it was also that period of time you make things, sew things, make wooden things, whatever. The old agricultural custom. And then coming into modern times, of course, it shifted over to, that's where you got your year-end paycheck. You've been working all year and saving. And now before you turn over a new leaf and start over for the next year, you can go out and take the savings and buy what people need. And people at Thanksgiving would be able to get together and notice what somebody needed. And Christmas was based on it was really like communism in the perfect form, because you bought what you could afford, gave people the best that it could need. The family provided for its own people that way without subjecting people to shame. The first person in my family to step up and destroy Christmas was my sister Remy Burke. Absolutely realized what she'd done. And her daughter that helped her with it converted to become Jewish, because really that's what she's more comfortable with. But I was going through hard times when I was going through divorce, and the lawyer had told me I had a very well-paid job, but it was becoming obvious that my ex-husband was not going to allow a friendly, no fault, they liked to call it. The feminists, again, look at the history of feminism. Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, Virginia Woolf, all Jewish. All out to destroy the methods we had of providing for ourselves. It's there in the history. It's unmistakable what they did. And what they did as feminists, it was the custom, if you got a divorce, that the father would be expected to continue to support the family. But then they introduced no fault. And if you were, it got pushed on you that if you were going to get a divorce, you had to be a modern woman and not need the money, even if you did need the money.
What the fuck is she talking about?
So I ended up
I
at my
don't
sister's
have
house
a
that
clue.
Christmas. And I'll never forget, she did not have to do this. I did not expect anything from her. She had opened her home. I mean, she had a lot of selfish reasons, because I was functioning as a household servant for her. But, still, she'd opened her home. I didn't expect very much from her materialistically for Christmas. I didn't care. It wasn't important to me. Having a good place to live among family, that was important to me. She bought something that was deliberately cheap. There was no excuse for her to buy this really chintzy,
Bucket truck.
embarrassingly cheap-looking bathrobe. She had better taste than that. She knew better than that. But as we all sat around in a circle, the entire extended family, and we're all giving gifts, and nobody until that moment, I don't remember anybody in our family ever making a remark about whether a gift was expensive or inexpensive or anything like that. I still see her reaching out to hand me this paper wrapped package and saying loudly so everyone could hear it that she certainly wasn't going to buy me anything expensive because she knew that I couldn't afford to buy anybody anything. And it wasn't said in a nice tone of voice as if she was playing pity party. She was classifying me as a loser.
Oh dear.
To the whole family.
Oh dear.
And I tried to ignore it. There was some shuffling and awkwardness because people were like, Rini, that was unnecessary. But Rini was psychotic. She's the one that destroyed our family. Really destroyed it. She's the one who paid Steve Hassan to go after my daughter, to send his people.
Really?
She's the one who staged the intervention before my daughter was killed. And as I said, Steve Hassan recently proclaimed that mystic Christians, not just Christians, not fundamentalist Christians or Bible-based Christians, but mystic Christians, meaning Catholics, meaning not just Catholics, and actually also including Pentecostals. Mystic Christians are the most dangerous. And what Rini did, she handed me that package, and I opened it. And it was embarrassing. I mean, it was like unnecessary. And we just, pushed it aside. Rini was being the mean, evil person she was. And the thing about Christmas, though, culturally, that you could forgive somebody like that. Because it was Christmas, you weren't going to fight about it. You weren't going to say, I wasn't going to say anything. I wouldn't normally anyway. I always knew she was like that. Everybody knew she was like that. She complained to me once that she tried to set up some party or barbecue backyard thing or something, and nobody came. Her neighbors wouldn't. I didn't say to her, well, it's your own fault, nobody likes you. She was all about power and control. The custom of Christmas, though, counteracted that for the rest of society. You could have people like that and still survive as a society, as a family. Because the custom of Christmas, with the songs and the food and the special smells, was that what Max Spears was talking about, the repeated ritual in the same place, with the same things, the smells and the songs and the sounds and the repeated actions, the gift giving. You had the custom of Christmas truce, which meant that fights and squabbles through the year didn't become permanent. Now, they might come back as a cycle, but they didn't keep escalating to the point of war like what Rini did. She wouldn't leave us alone after that. My daughter and I stayed away for 20 years. 20 years. Because my daughter
to the theatrics.
Was a teenager. The last time we would go to anything with the family because of what Rini was doing to everybody. And she was 34 when she was killed. We only went back to the family when my mother died. And the rituals of funerals, that's been destroyed too. The rituals of birth have been destroyed. Life itself, human life, is based on rituals through which we set our emotional patterns. And when you remove those patterns, that's why we have the escalation into drug abuse and chaotic violence, the horrific family violence crimes that are showing up in the news, the horrible, horrible, horrible things that are going on now. It's because of that destruction of those annual, repeated rituals. And it was the American Jewish community that funds the destruction of all forms of human relationship outside of their death cult. And as I was saying earlier, the Bible, the Old Testament, is not a Jewish creation. It came out of Egypt. Moses, who is supposed to be the founder of the Jewish culture, was an Egyptian prince. And he was educated in the Egyptian pharaoh, among the pharaohs, the most educated class of Egypt. And it's only recently, with these people that go down to South America for the ayahuasca rituals, that I came across a discussion of acacia wood. The Ark of the Covenant that holds Moses' tablets had to be made out of acacia wood. The burning bush, there is an acacia tree that it won't burn. If you have some other bushes and trees and you have some acacia wood and you burn that section out, the acacia wood will still be there. It won't burn. It doesn't burn easily. It burns. You'll see fire on it, but the fire won't consume it. There's an oil or something in it that the fire consumes that, and then the tree's still there, and then the tree sprouts leaves again. So it's the burning wood. On top of it, this is something that Mexico has acacia. It's a plant that grows in Mexico as well. And acacia wood, when burned, the smoke produces something like ayahuasca DMTs. There are DMTs in acacia. So burning the acacia wood and breathing the smoke is a drug trip. Moses was having a drug trip when he imagined that this being, well, he didn't even actually identify the being as God, the supreme being, because he asked the three who I should say sent me when I go see Pharaoh. Now, you listen to all the YouTube videos from the people who take ayahuasca, go into all the ayahuasca literature. They all talk about their drug trip involves beings who speak to them. An awful lot like what Moses is described, or is described as having happened to Moses. It's an ayahuasca trip. It's a drug trip. That's what it is. It's not God. And the mystic Christians are the ones who realize this. Jesus understood a great deal. That's why he was crucified. Max Spears, like I say, I dismiss a lot of the stuff about the super soldier stuff, but I was talking about the natural Shem. All human beings have this capacity. Some it survives, and hopefully they get good teaching somehow through a spiritually aware adult, or coming across the right literature, or going into a school or church setting where there's some good spiritual grounding, and they will be able to grow and not get caught up in delusions and insanity. But that's very difficult nowadays because the structure in which children get that grounding is the ritual structure of their heritage. And you can't just destroy a heritage and replace it. When European Americans destroyed Native American culture, most of those tribes disappeared into basically just whoever survives the wars just drugged and drank themselves. Liquor is a major problem to this day among Native American people because the old ritual structure was done away with. Now it survives here and there, and it's been able to be brought back. The remnant that keeps a little bit, the few elders that keep that knowledge alive. That's why I do these videos. 20 years from now, if these videos survive, or if people who say the same things are still around, we'll bring our culture back. The human race will bounce back from the crisis we're in. I believe it will. I'm optimistic. I don't think we're facing extinction. I think we're going to face a close brush with extinction, but I don't think it's going to really happen. And if we don't make it to Mars, I suspect that we will, though. I think that we'll at least have a base on the moon, and the next generation will take it to Mars. We're not stuck on the Earth any longer. We are the last Earthbound generation. The key, though, is what's going to destroy us is the lack of connection to natural birth, because the trans culture is not a culture. It's a destruction. The horrific assaults on our children, forcing our children to become sexualized towards and having gay drag queens, sexualizing our children. They're not, the natural child is left alone. Adults don't speak about sex to small children. They don't need to know about sex. They learn gradually. Of course, you know, when you got, and you don't need to be on a farm. You can have pets. They learn gradually about how life, but now how can you even teach them that life comes from a man and a woman when you've got monsters telling them that they don't have the right to even say that somebody is a man or a woman? Monsters. And this isn't about gay either, because gay men are still men. They love other men, but they're still men. Gay women are lesbians. They're still women. They love other women. But this stuff that's going on, this tranny stuff, is not homosexuality. It's something else. And nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to admit that not allowing, it began in my generation, that we stopped allowing little girls to learn how to mother babies with their dolls. People started buying them sex toy dolls. Barbie dolls were basically obscene. Teaching little girls that they're to be sex toys. They're not to be mothers. And that started with Barbie dolls. And then the trolls came out. I might have been 10 or 11 years old the first time they started selling troll dolls as anything other than Halloween toy. And I remember once I was waitressing in a restaurant in Boston. It's not there anymore. I think they finally closed it after hundreds of years. It was there since the 1700s, the Durgan Park. I was a Durgan Park waitress. Made good money too. It was good. Durgan Park had some windows where you could look down. So I was putting some food out on the table that was near those windows, and I glanced down, and there were these vending wagons selling souvenirs, Quincy Market souvenirs in Boston. And there was a vending wagon full of those little troll dolls. And all of a sudden, it was like a coup d'esprit. It was a flash of understandings, epiphany, that we were teaching our children to adopt demons in place of humans. And that's what we've done. Now, you look at people today, they're making themselves look like demons. And we're forced, people are forced not to object. So I don't know if we're going to survive, because it's dangerous to be seen pregnant now. You've got people like Lori Alexander Swan putting up videos calling for attacks on pregnant women. Yeah, there's a video. Go watch the news. A demonic, satanic channel that masquerades as an Abrahamic Christian channel. And you look down, she puts up a lot of videos, so I think you might have to look down quite a way. Scroll down, you're going to see the blue thumbnail with a pregnant woman on the thumbnail. I can't remember the title of it, but I remember the thumbnail. It shows a pregnant woman with her hand on her belly. And it opens with a video of somebody else speaking that Roe v. Wade, I think it's something about what they have planned from Roe v. I think Roe v. Wade is in the title. So you defined it that way. And Lori Alexander herself says this, and she shows another woman preaching the same satanic idea, that Roe v. Wade was overturned because the reptilian demons have placed their seed, and now they don't want any of those babies destroyed. So this entire generation of babies that are born to natural pregnant women are demons. So basically she is preaching that monstrous idea. No, Roe v. Wade was overturned because we are beginning to recognize that extinction is coming from the attack on the human race, mostly by the American Jewish community, because as difficult as the Muslims can be to non-Muslims, they're not destroying families. Muslim doctors, you're more likely, in fact, if you're pregnant, you're more likely to see a Muslim doctor, an Islamic person, as an obstetrician these days. Because American liberal, these monsters that are running American colleges, they're just in high schools, they're discouraging young women from going into obstetrics. They want them to go into abortion clinics and learn how to kill and dismember babies. But it's not easy for a young woman to express any desire to be an obstetrician or a midwife. It was difficult. My daughter was interested in midwifery. She was talking to people in Vermont when she was young. She told me she was beginning to study to be a doula, and that's partly involved with the pagan Wiccan stuff, which is a mixture of things. But unfortunately, again, it was my sister who attacked her. And Steve Hassan is attacking these young women. If they're attacking the 12 tribes because it's a farm community. Because women can have babies and raise them in that farm community. That's one of the primary targets of the Hassanite cult. When James Bernardo was murdered in 1988, 12 years old, my daughter was born in 1988, because both kids were 12 years old. He was a Pittsfield boy, went to Catholic school. The man who murdered him, Louis Lent, was a member of the Hasmonite cult. They had meetings. He also murdered that young New York girl. I think her name was Sarah Knight. Sarah Knight. I'm pretty sure that was her name, or Sarah Wright. But her family was Pentecostal. And we began to notice that there seemed to be a pattern of the harassment that the children were facing, the stalking, was focusing on Catholic and Pentecostal children. And now, with Steve Hassan having openly stated, it wasn't open, it was in a conference that somebody I know was at, that he blurted that out when somebody was questioning him about the practice of stalking people and not just letting them go ahead and join whatever cult they wanted, but stalking them at young people. And he belongs to a synagogue in Boston that is a gay cult, and it is paying to kill these kids, because that's what they do. They stalk them until they die. They're not allowed. They're not allowed to live. That's how my daughter was murdered. There's no question of what's going on. If we don't survive as a human race, it's not going to be because we nuke each other to death. That could happen, but basically, it's going to be an increasing number of horrible situations in which pregnant women can't get good care to deliver the child. Because even though we successfully overturned Roe v. Wade so that places like Texas can reestablish pro-life, it's not easy to bring in enough obstetricians to be able to take care of women, and you've got mad scientists coming out of Boston, Harvard, MIT, all those Boston area colleges, Yale, Princeton, all those northeastern colleges. And they're more interested in experimenting with artificial wombs that they can attach to. I understand that Pete Buttigieg has a false breast to pretend he's nursing a baby. They handed a baby to that man to do that to. Now, what's going to happen to that child? I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but what's going to happen to that child trying to figure out
Hear what she's talking about?
a man or a woman? They're taking young girls, 12, 13 years old, who are getting nervous about, it's not easy to go through adolescence. It never has been. We used to have a culture in which we accommodated a young woman who was being tomboy. She could be tomboy. She could express herself. Young women did take many kinds of jobs. We were not relegated to female sexuality the way young girls are today. Today, girls are forced into sexual female roles that are all street sex type roles. They're not allowed. I'm talking about the mainstream, okay? If you're lucky enough to be on a ranch or a farm, you're saying, well, my family doesn't do that. Yeah, but your family is also one step away from being raided by these East Coast. The government is actually raiding families like the Amish, putting them in jail for refusing to be part of the industrial system. And they've taken over procreation. So hopefully a remnant of people will survive and will rebuild. We'll rebuild our ability to birth children and care for them and care for young mothers. The waves, though, I did get way off base. But part of what Max Spears was talking about, because he talks about a lot of the stuff that's conspiracy. But if you get away from the conspiracies and look at the reality, it's even worse than the conspiracies. I think a lot of the wildest conspiracy theories about reptilians and everything are a way of hiding from the reality that's even worse than the fantasy. And if a person doesn't have training as a mystic, they become a drug addict. They get taken in and manipulated by people. If they have grounding, they can do what Tom Schoenberger did, because Tom Schoenberger had good grounding as a young man. He definitely was manipulated in some ways because his parents had some pretty strange beliefs. But they had a good grounding in the Catholic traditions, and he was able to stay in touch with that grounding and step away, at least partly step away from monsters like Lisa Clavier. And he's still in touch with a lot of the Occupy monsters. There's people that are putting the Pepe frogs out there, and they're spelling friends as F-R-E-N-S. Most of them are too young to understand what they're doing. They're satanic. They don't know what I'm talking about. But it's a result of our complete destruction of the rituals of a healthy civilization. We have far more violence and warfare going on today than we did when we practiced our cultural ritual holidays. God bless some, have mercy on some, and to hell with the rest. Denise Matto, over and out.